Well, it's an honor to be with you this evening. I'm very impressed at the number of people that are here to talk about, in many ways, what is an arcane and very complex issue. But it's also a very emotional issue and one in which we need to have these honest and forthright discussions about. As we sit here today, I think I can speak for almost all of us in the room with this sense, this feeling that government in America is just simply broken. And there's a lot of empirical data to support this position. Simply look at the deficits, both at the local, the state level, look at the national debt that we're facing. But simply beyond the empirical data and the raw evidence, there's just that gnawing feeling in our gut that something is wrong, that something has changed. Government no longer feels like the servant of the people. It's easy to feel that way, especially as you begin to pull back the layers of government spending and the layers of the public pensions. And when we pull back those covers, you'll find that there's much that we don't like, and there's a lot of reason to worry. Look at Arizona, for example. Our public pension system just 10 years ago had nearly a $5 billion surplus just 10 years ago. But largely as a result of benefit increases, rising salaries, general government growth, and a lot of whistling past the graveyard, that $5 billion surplus in a 10-year period of time has turned into a $10 billion deficit. Now, put that in perspective. Annual state revenues are $8.5 billion. $8.5 billion, all general fund state revenues. Now, the bad news is that $10 billion deficit is the best case scenario for the Arizona pension system. According to the Washington Post, in a story that ran in February of this year, the Arizona pension deficit may be as high as $37 billion. The difference between the $10 billion and the $37 billion is the discount rate that you apply. So pension systems, by common practice, will apply an 8% discount rate over the course of time. Many economists believe that that's way too generous and way too high and recommend only a rate of 5%. I found it interesting that CalPERS, the lead actuary for CalPERS, earlier this year had the temerity to suggest a lowering of the assumed rate in the CalPERS pension system from 7 3/4 to 7.5%. And a preliminary issued that report. By the time the meeting was held, the actuary's mind had been changed and recommended that they stick at the regular 7 3/4% rate. This is not just an Arizona problem. It's not just a California problem. The Pew Center for Research, not necessarily considered a bastion of libertarian or conservative thinking, recently estimated that the unfunded pension liabilities, all state governments combined, is at the low end $1 trillion and the high end $1.9 trillion. However much that deficit is, whether it's $1 trillion and 1.9, whether it's 10 billion or 37 billion, this much we do know. Our government pension commitments extend beyond our ability to pay for them. As government pension liabilities consume more of our tax dollars, it literally threatens every other area of government spending. And most of all, it threatens the taxpayer. When it's time to pay the piper, when the bill comes due, who do you think will be asked to pick up the check? It'll be you. It'll be us. It'll be the taxpayer. You cannot raise taxes high enough on this economy or in future economies to cover those liabilities unless you fix those systems. Despite the irrefutable math, the entrenched interests of government unions and progressives will do everything in their power to thwart any attempt at reform. There is no tactic they will not employ, there is no falsehood they will not promote, and there is no emotional string that they will refuse to pull. They understand better than the average public does the enormous financial advantage contained within our modern public pension system, and they will not go easily into the night. The protests and the lawlessness that we saw that engulfed the Wisconsin state capitol earlier this year was the physical demonstration of the brewing battle over the future of America. And I literally believe it is a battle over the future of America. Ultimately, that's what this fight is about. As Representative Paul Ryan puts it, it's a choice between two futures. On one hand, you have a robust private sector that incentivizes success and rewards success. On the other hand, the other future is two classes of people, those who work for the government and those who don't. In the legislature this year, I sponsored a major pension reform package. That package begins to turn the tide. It begins to turn the numbers. It moves government pensions closer to parity with the private sector, not all the way there. It addresses the looming deficits, and it ensures a stable system for those civil servants who rely upon the public pension system for their own retirement. And finally, it provides protections to the taxpayers through fiscal sanity in our pension system. Working with Representative Steve Yarborough, we successfully passed Senate Bill 1609. With this bill, we really wanted to tackle three major problems. First, we wanted to stop the abuses in the system. Examples of that would be some of the double dipping that goes on in some of our state agencies and departments. It also happens at the city levels as well. We wanted to stop the giveaways to politicians. I'll get into that in a little bit later. And for rank and file government workers, we wanted to better align the system to what people receive in the real world. Our plan was large and it was very complex, but I want to share with you some of the items that were included in Senate Bill 1609. First thing it did is it increased the contribution rate the employees would pay for their own retirement. Now, that may sound like a draconian thing to do. The average amount that a private sector employer pays towards their employees' retirement costs, he said it earlier, was 3%. In the state of Arizona, as it is in most of the country, most state employees are on a 50-50 match. 50% from the employer, 50% from the employee. Our public safety sector is more like a three-quarter match, meaning three-quarter from the employer, i.e. you and the government, and a quarter from the individual who will ultimately be receiving that pension. We also, in the bill, only awarded cost of living adjustments if the pension actually has the money to pay the cost of living increase. A novel idea. It was simply this. We wanted to ensure that these underfunded pension systems were not going to pay out cost of living increases for the current pensioners to the detriment of those who are still paying in the system and will someday rely upon that system for their own retirement. It was stealing from one generation over the next. And we also wanted to treat elected officials just like everyone else in the plan. We wanted to disincentivize government from hiring back people, the double dipping that I referred to. And we raised the retirement age in all systems, the public safety systems, as well as the state's largest systems, the Arizona State Retirement System. And then finally, we established in the bill a study under the Treasurer's Office, and I see